Have you ever thought about where your produce comes from? Most grocery chains receive produce from various local and national farmers. In fact, there are about 3.4 million farmers in the United States today. But of that staggering number, only 45,000 are Black farmers. At the Better Buggy, we are a proud group of Atlanta-based Black-owned farmers, selling produce locally and nationwide. Our easy-to-navigate online platform makes it easy for you to make a one-time purchase or to simplify your life by subscribing to our weekly produce box. Whichever frequency you choose, you can order with confidence, knowing you'll receive 100% organic farm-fresh produce. If you're looking for a thoughtful gift for a loved one that they'd actually find useful, be sure to pop by our online store where you can snag a gift card your recipient can use to order their own produce and t-shirts. Ready to start supporting local Black-owned farms and making healthier food decisions? Visit thebetterbuggy.com now to start shopping.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world population is not booming, it is a bust. Because there are fewer babies, there are more abandoned homes. And schools are closing because, it's not all because of a pandemic, but because there's not enough children to keep the schools open anymore. And we've seen that even long before COVID. So now it is a concern. So all over the world, countries are confronting population stagnation and a fertility bust. So, ladies and gentlemen, this came out in the New York Times, May 22nd, 2021. Long slide looms for world population with sweeping ramifications. Mm-mm-mm. So, a dizzy reversal unmatched in recorded history that will make first birthday parties a rarer sight than funerals, and empty homes a common eyesore. But you know what? The housing bubble. We have communities that were built here in my state, and no one ever lived in those houses. It's just sitting there. And I know you probably know of places around in your own town, and that was long before we got to this place. So maternity wards are already shutting down, and I did videos on that. Shoot, back in 2016 and 2017. And in Italy, we know there were towns where it was only one birth in the town, and I did those stories too. Ghost cities are appearing in northeastern China, university in South Korea can't find enough students. And in Germany, hundreds of thousands of properties have been razed with the land turned into parks. Like an avalanche, the demographic forces pushing towards more deaths than births seems to be expanding and accelerating, though some countries continue to see their populations grow, especially in Africa. Yeah, they ain't having no fertility problem there. Fertility rates are falling nearly everywhere else. We're not surprised about that. Demographers now predict that by the latter half of the century, or possibly earlier, the global population will enter a sustained decline for the first time. A planet with fewer people could ease pressure on resources, slow the destructive impact of climate change, and reduce household burdens for women. But the census announcements this month from China and the United States, which show the slowest rates of population growth in decades for both countries, also point to hard to fathom adjustments. Mm-mm-mm. I'm not surprised. The strain of longer lives and low fertility rates. But you know what, y'all? You just think about it. Let me go back to that, where they're saying there's going to be fewer resources, fewer household burdens, but you know what? Fewer people, right? But isn't that the plan of the Most High? Is to have fewer of everything on earth? People, definitely a reduction in people. And, one thing Big Judah said, I do agree. They act like that's the plan of the elite. That's biblical. That's been in the Bible before the elite even existed. So that ain't their plan. That ain't their plan. And plus, the elite, they're part of the judgment and punishment that's coming on America. They ain't gonna be running nothing. That's why they're running in them holes they built out in the ground. They know they're not gonna be in charge of nothing, but the rest of you need to get caught up. They ain't gonna be running nothing. You're barely running anything. The strain of longer lives and low fertility rates leads to fewer workers and fewer retirees, threaten to upend societies are organized around the notion that a surplus of young people will drive economies and help pay for the old. It may also require a reconceptualization of family and nation. Imagine entire regions where everyone is 70 or older. Imagine governments laying out huge bonuses for immigrants and mothers with lots of children. Imagine a gig economy filled with grandparents and Super Bowl ads promoting procreation. Those things ain't going to happen. The 400 years are up. What is the purpose of the people that are going out of power repopulating the earth? That wouldn't make any sense. You're not going to repopulate this earth. Your 400 years are up. A paradigm shift is necessary. Mhm. Okay, the ramifications and responses have already begun to appear, especially in East Asia and Europe, from Hungary to China, from Sweden to Japan. Governments are struggling to balance the demand of a swelling older cohort with the needs of young people whose most intimate decisions about childbearing are being shaped by factors both positive, more work opportunity for women, and negative, persistent gender inequality and high living cost. The 20th century presented a very different challenge. The global population saw its greatest increase in known history from 1.6 billion in 1900s to 6 billion in 2000 as lifespans lengthen and infant mortality decline. In some countries representing about a third of the world's people, those growth dynamics are still in play. By the end of the century, Nigeria could surpass China in population. Across sub Saharan Africa, families are still having 4 to 5 children. You ain't never gonna catch up to that. You ain't never gonna catch up to that. But nearly everywhere else, the era of high fertility is ending as women have gained more access to education and contraceptive, and as the anxieties associated with having children continue to intensify, more parents are delaying pregnancy and fewer babies are being born. Even in countries long associated with rapid growth, such as India and Mexico, birth rates are falling towards or are already below replacement rates at 2.1 children per family. And that's India and Mexico. Now, I had heard about Mexico population decline probably like around 2017. And I know I did some videos on that too. The change may take decades. But once it starts decline, just like growth, spirals exponentially. With fewer births, fewer girls grow up to have children, and if they have smaller families than their parents did, which is happening in dozens of countries, the drop starts to look like a rock thrown off a cliff. Some countries, like the United States, Australia, and Canada, where birth rates hover between 1.5 and 2, have um, so they're counting on immigrants. Each one of these countries are counting on immigrants to fill those gaps, and they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that, y'all. They're not going to do that. But in Eastern Europe, migration out of the region has compounded depopulation. In large parts of Asia, the demographic time bomb that first became a subject of debate a few decades ago has finally gone off. South Korea fertility rate dropped to a record low of 0.92. Well, they're well below the 2.1 in 2019. Less than one child per woman, the lowest rate in the developed world. Every month for the past 59 months, the total number of babies born in the country has dropped to a record death. Declining birth rate, coupled with a rapid industrialization that has pushed people from rural towns to big cities, has created what can feel like a two-tier society. While major metropolises like Seoul, they're talking about Seoul, Korea, continue to grow, putting intense pressure on infrastructure and housing. In regional towns, it's easy to find schools shut and abandoned. Their playgrounds overgrown with weeds because there are not enough children. Well, that's happening here in the US too. Even in the town that I'm in, when I was growing up, all of the elementary schools were open. Now it's only a few. The other ones are just sitting there empty. They haven't been occupied with children in years. So I mean that's already happening. And then of course we see the industry of um, baby clothes and toys that has declined a lot too. You don't see nowhere near as many stores. When I had my son, Kitty City was still open. We had a Toys R Us by us. There were all kinds of department stores with big, departments for baby goods and baby clothes and everything. Even when I go into my local Walmart, that department where they have baby clothes is dramatically smaller from back when I was shopping, even for my son. It is small now. So you can see things have changed. Even the children toys. I remember going into stores and it would be aisles and aisles and aisles of different toys. You don't even, it is so reduced down to just a handful of aisles. I mean, it is unbelievable how much things have changed, but they really have. But you know what, y'all? You ain't gonna have to worry about that because the population is gonna drop. It ain't gonna have nothing to do with no elites. And things are gonna go back to the natural state that it should have been in a long time ago, And many, many of these people are largely responsible for this kind of stuff. Because, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't encourage the family and having families. They encourage having careers, and they encourage schools and careers and stuff like that. They never promoted the family. They never did it. So when you say, well, why aren't they having kids? You didn't encourage that. You told the women to go get a career. You told them to go get an education. You didn't tell them to focus on a family. That's why you got many sitting around now telling you, Oh, and, they got their fancy condo and their little fancy car, and they got their six-figure salary. They want that for themselves, not for children. That's what you encouraged. So why are you complaining now that there's not enough children? Who made it that way? Okay. I mean, these were things I was hearing even when I was in the workplace. Oh, my daughter's in college. She's going to get out and get this big old career. Okay. And nobody's thinking about family. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.